Well, this is a document printed off from the government's website. It runs to 12 pages, and it is basically telling us who can apply to be exempt from the self-isolation, the pingdemic. And as you might expect, it's people in critical services ranging from transport to emergency services. In the document, in the guidance, it says this policy only applies if you or your employer has received a letter from a government department on which your name is listed. And it begins by saying that self-isolation remains an essential tool. So it's important to stress these are exemptions. Who it applies to, well, there's a list here. And it says that arrangements are already in place for frontline health and care staff. Well, we know about that. That was announced a few days ago. But here's the crucial list. Energy is one area. Obviously, the power stations, keeping the lights switched on throughout the UK, and civil nuclear power, so presumably nuclear power stations. So energy, crucial. Fuel, gas, electricity generation, nuclear power. Then digital infrastructure, that's keeping broadband switched on, making sure that everyone's got Wi-Fi and so on, businesses have got it. And next comes food production and supply. Well, we're expecting to hear more about some measures by the government to keep to solve the crisis, or at least help try and deal with the crisis of empty shelves in the supermarkets. But food production and supply is one of the areas on this list. So that could be everything from food processing plants. The meat industry has been very critical today of the problems they're facing. Abattoirs, slaughterhouses, meat production, all sorts of food production. Waste, so that's sewage. Most important in the hot weather, no doubt. Water, making sure there's plenty of water in our taps. The reservoirs are given, despite the dry weather, are able to supply enough water. Veterinary medicines. Obviously for agriculture as well as for domestic pets, no doubt. Essential chemicals. Then comes essential transport. Well, obviously that's everything from air traffic controllers, railway signallers the government's talking about, but also people working on the buses, the trains and the tube in London. Next comes medicines, supply of medicines, medical devices, obviously all sorts of medical equipment, clinical consumable supplies, that's presumably pills in the chemist and the supermarket. Then comes emergency services. Well, this obviously is predictable. Police, fire services and so on. And then the border control, obviously a very contentious area at the moment with all the debate about border controls. Border controls on the list. Then essential defence outputs. Well, that must be barracks and all sorts of protection of all sorts of security and protection, Ministry of Defence establishments, RAF, Navy and so on. Essential defence outputs, it says here. And then local government. Well, that's obviously relates to keeping the bins emptied. There have been suggestions that some councils are short of refuse collectors and the bins are under threat. So a great long list there. Obviously predictable, the areas that we know have been suffering. We are expecting to hear more about moves to keep supplies of food and other goods to supermarkets a little later.
Yes, I mean, it comes to something, John, doesn't it, when you need an exemption to keep the lights on in the country. But can I just clarify, is that exempt if you're double jabbed or just exempt?
Yes, that's right. I will read you what it says. It says, that this policy applies to named workers in specifically approved workplaces who are fully vaccinated, defined as someone who is 14 days post-final dose and who have been identified as close contacts. It says that permission to attend work is contingent on following certain controls agreed by the Department of Health. This is not a blanket exemption for all workers in a sector, it says. But yes, it is fully vaccinated and somebody who's had it at least 14 days ago.
And just quickly, any sign of confidence from government about whether this will be enough?
Well, they obviously hope it will. I mean, on the Sky News earlier today, Kwasi Kwarteng was talking about fingers crossed. That was a phrase he used in an interview with Kay Burley when he was talking about tackling the whole pingdemic problem. The government, as you know, is going to get rid of this ping process on the 16th of August. Fingers crossed, said Mr. Kwarteng. Today in the House of Commons, Jeremy Hunt, who chairs the Health Select Committee and is a former Health Secretary, called on Nadeem Zahawi, who was making a Commons statement, to not wait till the 16th of August. Do it now, he said. Well, the answer from Mr. Zahawi, as it has been from the new Health Secretary Sajid Javid, is no, we want to wait until the 16th of August to get rid of the isolation rules as they currently stand, because more people will have been vaccinated by then. That has been the government's argument, but there is growing pressure from MPs like Jeremy Hunt and, of course, business leaders who are thoroughly frustrated and fed up with the vast numbers of people being forced to self-isolate. There is pressure to bring that August 16th date forward much sooner.